Hello, welcome. I'm excited to welcome you to the book launch for Teoni Spathelfer's Little Wolf and White Raven. We're excited to have you join us. If you're joining us live or maybe watching this recording later, welcome. I'm Monica and I'm with Heritage House Publishing. We publish books for both adults and young readers, focusing on historical, social, political, and recreational subjects. We have the Amazing Stories series and our Wandering Fox imprint for middle grade fiction. We're very excited that Little Wolf and White Raven are part of the Heritage House Publishing family. And if you want to keep in touch with us to learn about Teoni's third book, you can sign up for our monthly newsletter, follow us on social media. Links for all that are at heritagehouse.ca. So I'm just doing a quick introduction and then I'm going to hand it over to our host, Tchadas Leo and Teoni. As I mentioned, we are recording this. You'll be able to watch it at the same YouTube link or on our Facebook page. I'd like to thank Monroe's Books, who is our official book selling partner for this event. And you can get signed copies. And you can also request a personalization if you want Teoni to address it to someone specific, maybe for a gift for the upcoming holidays. Monroe's is happy to accommodate that. And they have shipping, I believe, available worldwide, but definitely a great option for Canada-wide shipping. Let us know where you're joining us from. The chat is open for you on YouTube and Facebook. And so I'm going to start by just introducing our host, Tchadas Leo, and he will introduce you to Teoni. So at 12 years old, Tchadas began working part-time as an apprentice at Campbell River's local TV station, where he trained as a junior production assistant. At 15, he was hired as an assistant producer for CRTV and later on Shaw TV. At 17, Tchadas graduated from the Francophone program and moved to Nanaimo to pursue a Bachelor of Arts with a major in digital media at Vancouver Island University. Most recently, in 2020, Tchadas signed a contract with Czech TV to produce a podcast and TV show called Our Native Land. And Teoni's actually done 2 episodes with Our Native Land, which you can check out. And so now I'll turn it over to you, Tchadas, and let you take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Monica. I appreciate it. Again, welcome everybody to the virtual book launch for Teoni Spathelfer for both her books. We're going to go one at a time. I'm very excited to do so. But before I introduce Teoni, I'd just like to do a territory acknowledgement that I acknowledge the land with respect to the Lekwungen peoples, which is the traditional territory where Czech Studios stands upon. I'm here in Ladysmith, not in Czech today, but I want to thank all the nations, the Coast Salish, the New Channel, and the Kwakwakwa on Vancouver Island. So I definitely thank these nations and traditional land keepers for allowing us to live, work, and play on their land. And I thank all of you, the viewers and listeners that are watching us today. And thank you to Teoni for thinking of me to host you here for your book launch. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tchadas. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
Hey, no problem. So just for people that want to get a quick little sense of who Teoni's all about, she's a member of the Heiltsuk First Nation from coastal BC. Since childhood, she's been immersing herself in her own culture, learning about other cultures around the world. She's worked as a publicist, a radio journalist, a host and producer, and an arts and music writer. So a fantastic resume so far. Her documentary, Teoni's Dream, which is informed by her mother's residential school experience, has aired nationwide across CBC Radio. Her photography has been featured across various media, sold privately, and she has 3 daughters and 4 grandchildren. So again, that is a little bit about Teoni, and we're here about her first 2 books. And so Teoni, take it away. I'll let you have a chat there and continue along.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. As one of my elders reminded me many, many years ago, that when you're doing your introduction, always say where you're from, who your family is. So I'm from the Heiltsuk Nation, as previously mentioned. I'm the great granddaughter of Baloo, and my mother, Lena White, she lived in the village of Bella Bella and attended St. Michael's Residential School, which we will talk about later. And yeah, so there is 3 books in the series. And the first one came out in May, Little Wolf. The second one is White Raven, just came out in September. And the third book will be out in May 2022, and that is called Abalone Woman. I'm super excited about all three books. We've had the opportunity to work with Natasha Davies. She's a very talented illustrator. And so you see lots of bright color, and we really spent a lot of time through the illustrations bringing the stories to life. So that's been an exciting process, and I thank her for that. The stories follow three generations of the women in my family, my mom, myself, and my daughters. So that's a little bit of background just about the series.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's start with the first one, which is Little Wolf, and we're just gonna, just for the people listening or watching, that we're gonna just start off with some questions, and then we'll dive into the book itself and take a look at it and see all the beautiful drawings inside of the book and read a bit of it. So let's get started and maybe talk about when you were writing Little Wolf. Did you see it as a children's book originally, because it does talk about residential school experiences? So did you start it and think that it was going to turn into more of a children's book, or did you know that right from the get-go?
Well, I kind of had a sense of it, but the most important thing for me was just to bring the stories out and not worry too much about who would be reading it. Um, and when, because in fact, these stories were written many years ago when we lived on the Sunshine Coast and we grew our family up there. So, and they're all grown up now. Our girls are all grown up. So, yeah, it was probably about 18 years that the story sat. And then 3 years ago, decided time to dust them off, do a little editing, and see about finding a publisher. So, in fact, the most important thing was just to write the stories.
That's great. No, and that it's very captivating to really read that. And for me, like I told you before when we were talking on the show, is that for me as an adult Indigenous man, when I was reading the book, for me to read it and actually learn more than what I thought I already knew, I think is powerful. So I think it's more than a children's book, even though it's under that category.
Yeah, one thing I do want to add is I always did see families sharing the stories. That was a big thing for me. So, children and their families, children and their educators, their caregivers. I saw it as, a small group sitting down together and sharing the stories.
Yeah, that's really nice. Absolutely. Now, I don't want to give away a portion of the book, but one part that I really enjoy about Little Wolf is the how much like wildlife tends to follow you. And I went to Stanley Park and did the video there, like the little promo for today's event. I mean, just for people that have listened or people that have read the book, like you showing up there at Stanley Park every day or every other time you went down the seawall, like that animal would follow you. That's a real story, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. And I did have a red rain jacket. And
Maybe that's my problem. I need to go there with a red jacket.
I think that really helped the otter to find me among the crowd, because that did happen. And yeah, lots of experiences in my life with animals and wildlife. And that comes out in a bit in Little Wolf for sure. And some of those experiences were also my mom's. The fishing boat experience is one that my mom talked about all her life, and she just loved that. So, and I've had my own experiences, as my daughters have, with dolphins on the Sunshine Coast, and that's what the scene is. She's fishing with her grandfather, and they see dolphins, and the dolphins just play in the wake of the boat. They swim beside the boat for most of the day.
That's amazing. Now, just before we get to the book, I do want to just also touch on the fact that when we talk about residential school experiences, we sorry.
Oh,
Oh my
bless you.
God, excuse me. Oh, hopefully that wasn't too loud. Yeah, so when we talk about residential school experiences, most of us would know that they're quite harsh, they're quite in depth, they're very emotional. And so when you were putting this into a children's book, was there things that thought that you shouldn't put in or that you should leave out? Like, what was your gauge when you realized this was going to be in a children's book, and what was the general reaction when you showed this to people? Has it been good?
Well, I wanted this to be something that children could understand. And So for that reason, a lot of the really dark experiences that my mom and her cousins had were not included in this book. Um, this is meant to be a resource for children and their families, as I mentioned earlier, children and their educators. So I feel it's very age appropriate, and also feel it's never too early to talk to our children about not only this issue, but racism comes up in Little Wolf. Never too early to do that. I did that with my daughters, and so they grew up knowing our First Nations history as much as I knew other First Nations histories across North America, and then cultures that have experienced human rights abuses as well. So I feel like I did my best to give them a solid background uh, that they could learn from, and to understand, that there is beauty in our differences, and to appreciate those, and not to be afraid of them, and not to marginalize people because they might be different from us. Uh, so yeah, it's a big topic, but it's never too early to start.
And I think you tackled it well, absolutely. So let's pull up the first book here. I want to see Little Wolf. And I did forget to mention right at the beginning, too, and I'll mention it a couple of times. We do want to thank Heritage House Publishing, obviously, for arranging this live book launch for Teoni. And we also want to thank Munro Books in Victoria. They've been super helpful. And if you want to purchase this book, you can go to Munro Books and get it in person. You can get a signed copy. You can go online and order it. So again, a thank you to Munro Books. So Teoni, let's we're obviously seeing some lovely drawings and words here. So I will hand it over to you, and maybe we'll pick a spot. You can let Monica know what you would like to look at and what you might like to read.
Well, I think she can just keep going, flipping
Okay,
through
perfect.
the pages. I'll just read one page and then I'll talk about which one it is, although
Oh,
some of the
great. Yeah, that
listeners
works.
may already know about it because she's
Yeah,
already
no, that'll
started, so
work.
that's good. No worries. Little Wolf was the spirit name she secretly gave herself so that she could stay strong in the city's jungle. In the heart of the city, on one of its busiest streets, Little Wolf would sit on the front steps of her grandmother's house. She would howl at the full moon when she longed for the smell of the forest, and this animal song brought a smile to her heart. So for me, this is like the seed for the Little Wolf story. She's moved from the country to the city. She's having a hard time adapting. She experiences things there that she hadn't experienced before, like at school and racism. And then her mother makes great efforts to keep her connected to her culture. So she goes to beading classes and dancing classes. And along the way, they adopt a rescue dog. You just saw the dogs there at the pound. So I feel like there's a little something in the story for everyone, and it's been great having feedback from people. One of
Yeah,
my young
what's that feedback been like?
well from people, as young as 8 years old. I've had a little guy named Dale who lives in Victoria, so excited about Little Wolf, and so excited he took the book to his show and tell and told
Wow,
the
that's
kids at his class everyone should have this book because he just loves it so much. So that was really so heartwarming for me to hear. I know a couple in Calgary, and the book was purchased for the woman who had lived in the Rocky Mountains and loved nature and the surroundings, but she moved to Calgary for love and really missed that connection. So her partner ordered this book as a surprise. And so now Little Wolf sits on her desk in her office in Calgary to remind her that, yeah, she's connected to the Rockies still, but also there's wildlife in Calgary. I've spent a lot of time in Calgary, so you can even see moose there, lots of birds. And so it's just a matter of adjusting to where you are, looking around. And then also I have a friend that I've known since I was 10. There's a group of girls that I've known from that time and a little bit earlier. She had read Little Wolf, and she got in touch with me right away, and she said, "Did that scene in the schoolyard happen at our school? Because if it did, I feel so bad that I wasn't there to help you." Yeah, that's the scene there where she experiences bullying and racism. And I said, "Oh, no, no, thank you for asking. That's so, so kind of you." I had gone to 4 different elementary schools, and so this had happened at the previous one to where I met this group of girls. But I thought, how nice to get that feedback so many years later that she was concerned, and yeah, it was great. And then this summer, walking with a friend on the Sunshine Coast. I know right now it's just about Little Wolf, but
Mhm.
uh, and she is non First Nations, and we were out having a beautiful walk along the beach, and she's so happy for me to have the books out. She said, "I have to tell you how hard it is to be non-First Nations, non-Indigenous, a white person right now after everything that's been happening with the students being uncovered or their remains being found at the residential schools. So it's really interesting to see how each person reacts. I had a librarian from Ontario write to me, and she said, she hopes that all her kids will find that little wolf voice inside them to inspire them. So that was a pretty special email.
That's really cool. I'm glad to hear the feedback's been good. Now, I want to talk just before we, unless there's anything else you want to talk about Little Wolf. For me, the thing I enjoy, besides the story, is the artwork that
Oh,
was done. So if you can give people maybe a little background of how you met her and the artwork that's gone to put these books in motion.
okay. So my daughter here in Victoria knew that I was looking for an illustrator, so she happened to be in Sioux and noticed some murals there and took some photos of them. She thought they were beautiful. She sent them to me. I thought they were great as well. So I contacted the illustrator, Natasha Davies, and she was interested and available to start working on Little Wolf and then White Raven. And right now we're actually working on Abalone Woman. So yeah, it was meant to be, and she's close by, so that's been nice.
That's
We
awesome.
worked
Yeah, no,
really closely together, just bringing the scenes to life.
yeah, no, absolutely. And the colors I think are just so captivating. Like I have the book in my apartment when I have fellow students come by and they see the book, it like immediately captures them. Even if they, might not read the book, they'll pick it up, right? And they'll want to see it. So I think that's also a huge
Oh,
advantage if somebody walks in the Monroe books and sees a book. I mean, I think yours is just going to pop out with the colors, and then when they actually open it they'll just be even more content that they grabbed the book, in my personal opinion
that's great.
anyway.
Thanks for
Yeah.
your feedback.
Yeah, okay, well, let's unless you have anything else to talk about Little Wolf, I want to move on to White Raven, if that's okay with you.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So White Raven, we get into more about residential school experiences. So I want to know first, at what point during your life when you were talking to your mother that you really started to capture what really happened to her in residential school?
Actually, all my life I've known about her experiences there.
Mhm.
And, is it very likely that you'll find that and discover that in First Nations families and First Nations communities that as far back as a lot of people can remember, they've heard those stories, those firsthand accounts of parents, of aunts, uncles, cousins, having gone to the school. So, I've known about it all my life. And then I was born in Port Alberni, and there was a school there. And so my mom and dad would go there on the weekends and pick up some of our cousins when they were allowed to come and visit, just designed to get them out of the school and give them a little break. So that was nice. We have some precious photos from that time that I'm pretty fond of.
Mhm. So you mentioned that the story is about healing. Like it's a very healing orientated book. So can you tell me when's what is the intent when somebody reads this book and is done with the book? What are you hoping to achieve in regards to the healing process?
Well, for starters, the reason there was healing is the children were taken from their homes and forced to go to the residential schools. Parents didn't have an option, grandparents didn't have an option if they were the caregivers. The children had to go, and the schools were designed to take the culture out of the children so that they would be starting with a fresh palate, really, so to speak, the educators and the churches and could form them into people they wanted them to be. Unfortunately, during that time, there was a lot of mistreatment. And this is where the need for healing really comes in. The children were not fed properly. At my mom's residential school, which was St. Michael's Indian Residential School, there was actually an experiment that they had undertaken where the children were deliberately not fed to national food guides. So they were underfed. They weren't fed full proper meals, balanced meals. They were given, raw sausages, rotten food. Sometimes there was bugs in the food. So these children were malnourished for sure, as far as Canadian standards go. And at the time, that was happening. There was a lot of abuse in the schools. Not only were the children, mistreated as far as their food went, their bodies were not respected, their spirits were not respected. They were beaten. So many of the students have very traumatic experiences from that time. And in fact, my mom, much later in life, discovered she had PTSD from that time in the school. And so for her healing journey started in the 90s. There was a movement afoot where there was lots of opportunities for residential school survivors to attend workshops, healing workshops. And so she was able to do that in the city. There were some retreats that she was able to attend, and it made a huge difference for her spirit and helped to bring her culture back to her and a childhood that was torn away from her. And uh, so healing was a huge thing. She undertook that journey and in fact inspired some of her cousins and closest friends to also take that journey. So it was also very good for her and our family.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Teoni. I'm sure everybody listening and watching as well would feel the same way. So I appreciate you answering that. And it is always a hard topic to talk about, but a necessary topic. And we know it's been at the forefront of the Canadian media and international media for almost a full year now after this discovery of the Kamloops Residential School. So you had obviously written this book well before these events. So looking back now, based off of the information that everybody has and the knowledge that people are gaining from these unfortunate events, would you have written White Raven any different? Would have you done anything that would maybe steer the story in a different direction, or do you feel like this is just you've written it at such a critical time and it was released at such a critical time, surprisingly?
Yeah, it's really interesting around the timing. Looking back, no, I don't think I would change anything. I might add a little bit more, perhaps, about my mom's experiences. But the whole purpose behind sharing that story was so that people would hear my mom's story. Because when she was alive, especially when she was a young woman, people did not believe her story. They either didn't think it could happen in Canada, they didn't want to know about it, or they felt like, all those Indian kids needed to go to those schools so that they become more civilized. So there was a lot of different thoughts kicking around at the time, and so for me, it was just really important to share her story, so people would believe her story. And the feedback I've been getting, some of the feedback on this is, as adults are reading this story with children, they're learning about this history too. Some of them didn't know about that. If you're a bit older, bit older, 30 and over probably, uh, it wasn't taught as well in schools as is happening now. There's a lot of opportunity to share stories now. And so it was just really important for me to get her story out there.
That's good. Well, I'm glad you did, and I think people are appreciating that, like I said before, and I think you've done it eloquently in a very easy way to understand. And I hate to say that too, because it's not like we should have to make it easy to understand, but there is a lot of people that really are starting from like zero information, zero idea of this even happening. So there is an element like, let's make this as accessible as possible. So I think you've done a great job. So speaking of great job, let's go right into taking a look at White Raven here. Again, beautiful drawings, beautiful paintings that were done by Natasha Davies. So we got Monica here pulling it up, and we're going to go ahead and just have her kind of swipe through some images in the book again, and then you can pick a part that you enjoy.
Sure. Actually, while she's doing that, the image I like is on page 21 that I'll be reading from the book on page 20. I just want to say, too, that as I'm getting feedback from adults who are saying, and they grew up in Canada and they don't know very much or nothing at all about residential schools, and they're learning with their children. I'm not mad about that. I'm not upset about that. I'm actually really happy to be part of that journey where someone is learning that history. And more people do need to be honest and say, you know what, I don't know anything. So, rather than look at that as a negative, I'm looking at that as a positive thing, and just happy to have the opportunity to share this story and to get it out there. So the illustrations are beautiful in the book. This is my mom with my 3 daughters and beautiful colors in the sunset behind. Yeah,
Oh,
Natasha's.
the colors are so amazing.
Yeah. And there's some historical reference as well. There's the school and uh, and one of the old boats. The kids used to hop on that boat from Bella Bella, and they'd pick up kids along the way and take them to the school in Alert Bay. And I remember my mom saying, it took 2 days because the boats were so old back then. And, it was
Wow.
1945. She started there in 1945. So, um, transportation was somewhat limited and took a long time to get around. Now, oh yes, here we have the children in the school. There was always so many children in one room, and
Yeah, I can imagine that being a difficult situation.
yeah, it was, they were warehoused basically. And so the children would sleep in one room. The girls would have one half of the building, the boys the other half. And it was often hard to sleep at night because not only did you miss your family and your community, but there would be other children in the room who felt the same, and they would be crying at night or they would have nightmares. So, a really solid, restful sleep was unheard of, actually.
Mhm. Yeah, and the rotten food part, I didn't really. I knew that there was malnourishment, but the whole research of looking into, like they were experimenting and like giving the rotten food and the raw food. Like I understood the malnourishment, but to that extent, for me was incredibly surprising.
Yeah, pretty tragic actually. And there was different experiments that happened across Canada in the
Hmm.
residential schools, things that have been documented over the years.
Hmm.
And yeah, yeah, it's really interesting because one of the families I've heard from is from Ontario, and the mom is a dietitian. So she was reading the book with her children one night before bed, and actually they read it on the very first day for Truth and Reconciliation back on September 30th. And so food is a big thing in their house. Healthy food is really important. And so her daughter, who is 9, just looked at her mom and just couldn't understand why they were giving the children such awful food.
Hmm.
And here's a 9-year-old who just totally gets that. It's not safe. It doesn't taste good. And, why would they do that? And then she went on to say something that I just loved. She said that she was so happy that there was someone in White Raven's life at the school who who appreciated her, who looked after her.
Hmm.
In one part of the story, my mom gets the mumps, and so she's sick, sorry, and
Hmm.
spends time in the sick room. And so the teacher there really took great care for her and ended up making her a dress later. And
Hmm.
oh, it's this scene actually
Yeah,
where
right here. Yeah.
she's
Now
with
I
the
do.
wearing the dress. But I just thought, oh, I just love that a 9-year-old saw the value of that.
Absolutely. Now, speaking while we're on this page right here, and as maybe people have noticed on every single, almost every single drawing, there's the white raven somewhere in that drawing. So could you maybe give me a little tidbit of why that raven is in every single scene?
Sure. Well, my mom was experienced a lot of trauma and sadness while she was at this school. Fortunately, she had some cousins there. Her sister later appeared at the school many years later, towards the end of my mom's time there. Uh, but the white raven actually is something that only my mom saw, and it gave her strength to be in the school and to have to stay there. And so somehow it was like a guide for her to see this white raven. And there are white ravens. They're very rare. They've been seen most recently that I know of is I think around Parksville, and then also up in the Haida Gwaii on the Queen Charlotte's most recently. So they are around. They're like an albino raven. But for my mom, it was just a source of power for her. Helped her to be
Okay.
there.
I can imagine. Absolutely. Now, I do want to take a moment. Obviously, we have lots of people watching here. I do want to acknowledge everybody who's been watching so far. If you look in the comment section here, there's some of your childhood friends that are watching you right now, and they're so proud and happy for you. A lot of congratulations. Leave my father-in-law's watching. And yeah, we got a bunch of people here, but there's one question in here that I did actually enjoy, and I have asked it to you before, and it's a great one. It's from Greg Bellamy, and he says, "Hello, Teoni, Sandy here. Did you know and did your mom know that you were planning on writing these books?"
Yeah, I started writing these when she was still alive. And so, in fact, my very first experience of talking in the schools about residential schools was with my mom. And one of my daughters, a teacher from her school, had invited us, as well as two elders from the Seashell, or the, sorry, how am I saying this right? Shishal Nation. So we spoke in a building at the nation's administration offices about residential schools. And so that was my very first time, and I'm so glad we did that. And so, yeah, she was aware I was writing the books or the stories. They were stories at the time. And at the time, it was just one story. But I realized later, before going to a publisher, that in fact, there was three stories there. And something else I did with my mom when she was alive, I was freelancing to CBC Radio out of Vancouver at the time. And I did a story with my mom and one of my daughters, and it was about her residential school experiences, how it affected our family. It was about 14-minute long documentary, which I was very pleased and honored that it ran for 15 or 16 years, either in full or in part, on different shows. So I was lucky to do a lot with my mom actually before she passed.
That's good, and I'm glad you had an opportunity to do that, and it's nice to do that with her and have that experience with her. And now that she's passed, but there's her legacy will be brought forth thanks to your books, and I think she'd be very proud of you.
Thank you for the question, by the way, guys. My friends on the
Yeah,
Sunshine Coast, and
yeah, they're looking from the Sunshine Coast. There's lots of people here. There's one of your childhood friends. Hold on, I can't find her now. Oh, Sharon Clausen.
oh yes, yeah. Hey,
There you
Sharon.
go. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, just before we go, I'd just love for you to do sort of I'll close things off, but if you want to have sort of any final thoughts, any final comments on your journey so far with both these books out now available at Monroe Books. Obviously, it's quite nice to add author to your extended resume that you already have. Being a producer, a radio reporter. You're continuing on this journey, and I think you have a lot more to go. So again, obviously, my congratulations for becoming an author, and a successful one at that. So if you just want to take as much time as you want to give your closing thoughts and any thank yous.
Thank you. And I just want to say, actually, Chaz, we do have a little more time. So
Oh,
if
we
there's,
do. Okay, how
yeah,
much
yeah,
time do you want to go to?
I think we were booked until 3. We'll see how we
Oh,
do.
Fanny.
But
Oh,
if
okay.
you have
I
any other
have
questions,
more.
Yeah. So if you have any more questions there, you want to dig up, go for it. I'm
Yeah,
just going to
yes.
quickly look at my notes. So as far as White Raven goes,
Let's look at
um,
it.
let me just read page 20. And so the accompanying illustration is this one here, which I just love. So this is my mom. She's in the middle. Right. Oh, hold on. How do we do this?
Maybe we get Monica to pull that page up if we're lucky.
Jump in. So this is my mom here at a healing retreat that she
I-
went to. I believe it was a month long. And so during that time, she really connected with her culture and also just other coastal cultures because there were so many people from across BC there. It was a really powerful time for her. She came back renewed, re-energized, and realized so many things on her life's journey, and was really able to come to a place of peace for herself, which I'm so glad of that she was able to do that and leave this world feeling much more healed. And
Mhm.
I think it's really important for anyone out there who is a survivor if they can connect with the counselors that are available in communities through the Residential School Survivors Project. And there are resources available. So, and it can be confidential. You can be welcomed into a group or a community of survivors. There's lots of options there. So, um, it's a really good thing. So I'll just read
Mhm.
from page 20. After sharing her story with her granddaughters, White Raven started going to workshops for residential school survivors. She learned that she was not a bad child, but that her childhood had been taken from her. White Raven inspired her friends and family to sign up for the workshops, and it was healing for her to share her stories. It helped her grandchildren understand their grandmother better, and it made them love her even more. She told her grandchildren that they could do anything in life that they focused on, and she would always be proud of them, no matter what. And she taught them that the things that make you different are the things that make you beautiful and strong. My mom really struggled as a result, too, with her education because at the schools, there wasn't really a focus on education. The children would get up at 7 in the morning and start chores right away. And even though there were janitors in the school, they had to sweep, they had to mop the floors, they had to do a lot of cleaning. And in fact, their schooling didn't start until 1 in the afternoon, and they would only get 3 hours. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity for learning there. So my mom really struggled, when she left there, and they weren't taught enough. She taught herself at 16 years of age how to tell time. That might not seem like a big deal right now in the digital age, but you know, clocks were around back then. They had hands and, one for minutes and one for hours. So at 16, she taught herself how to tell time. So that was a good boost for her. Uh,
Absolutely.
and then much later in life, she went back to school to start getting her high school education and her GED. And I remember
What
sitting,
age? What age was she when she went back to school?
oh, she was probably in her 50s, actually.
Wow.
Uh,
Well, look at that.
Well, she went back twice, mid 40s and then early 50s. So I remember my kids sitting at the kitchen table with her and helping her with math. And they were probably, maybe grade 4 and grade 6, and went on for a few years while she was at the school. And recently, someone from up around Fort Nelson contacted me, a First Nations lady, and she had gone to the schools and had a very harsh life there and is still struggling with it, and has her grandchildren with her, and she looks after them. And she said, she has a hard time reading still. And I gave her the example of my daughter sitting at the kitchen table or on the couch with my mom doing math, listening to her read things, helping her understand words or pronounce them, words she hadn't seen. And she did really well to get by, but when she had to sit down and start studying, she needed some help, and it just warmed my heart to see my girls helping her. So, I said this to the lady up in Fort Nelson. I said, you have grandkids? Sit down with them, get them to read to you, you read to them, whatever it is you need help with, work with them. They can help you along that journey too. So that was pretty
Absolutely.
heartwarming. And I don't even know if my daughters remember doing that, but I just
Hmm.
recall seeing that a lot over the years.
Yeah, and education so important, and that kind of ties into a couple comments that are coming in now about. There's one from Ann Sullivan that says, "I was never taught anything about residential school back in our days." Caitlin Gal wrote, "As someone who grew up in Ontario in the 1990s, I wasn't taught about the residential school, and sadly didn't learn until I was in my early 20s." And it goes on. There's quite a few people that have experienced the same thing. And even for myself, I'm 30 years old, and I remember being in grade 7, I think so. I was 13 years old, and we were doing social, our social studies. And I did mine in French actually. And I remember it was maybe it was like 2 pages. Like it was like so small, and the book was this big, and there was 2 pages about residential school in French. So what are your thoughts on what could be great for our future? But your book is obviously a great outlet for this. But what do you think the education system can do to help improve this?
Uh, well, there's a lot, and things have come a long way in the education system. Anne and
Hmm.
I actually went to elementary school and high school together, and I recall the social studies book, and there was just only reference to First Nations people in relation to the explorers that went across Canada and discovered Canada. So, things have changed. Caitlin, who's I know a good friend from Ontario, and so she's mid 30s, and it still hadn't improved by that point. My daughters, my youngest one is 31. Things did start to improve a bit with them. There were starting to be Native education teachers in the schools, not just in the city. That started happening earlier in Vancouver, in the urban areas, that were heavily populated. But it took longer to get out into BC, to rural BC. Uh, you know, I do have to give the teachers credit, because there are many teachers now who take great interest and in the topic of First Nations history in Canada and the current history of the times now that we're in. So I really appreciate that. And there was something else I was going to say about that now. Oh yes, I do presentations in the schools. And so I meet a lot of these teachers, and they're so excited to hear First Nations voices and to bring those experiences into their classrooms. So very happy about that. One of the things I've noticed too is, or one of the things I do, sorry, with the kids when I'm doing the residential school topic, the White Raven book, is I'll say, what is it that you really like about your school? Do you love that your cousin goes to your school? Do you go on really great field trips? Is the librarian awesome? Always bringing great books in. Do you like the art or the sports program? Is there a certain teacher? What makes your experience really great at your school? And so I'll ask them, and I'll say, now what I'd like you to do is let's all be quiet for just a moment, and let's think about that, whatever it is you really like. And then let's hope that children, not only in BC, but across Canada and across the world, can have those positive experiences that you have here at your school. So by bringing all the information to them, and age appropriate too, I might add, and then helping them to see things differently. Another thing I do is I talk about the UN rights of the child, and I've picked probably 5 different articles. There's like 52. It's just really long, but it's a really great learning opportunity for the kids, because it talks about access to clean water. Does that happen in Canada? Does every child have access to clean water still? And so just helping them look at things differently. And then I'll ask them as well. I'll often leave with the older kids an assignment after going through the UN Declaration there on the child, and other backgrounds in the White Raven book and residential schools. is I'll ask them to think about how they would do things differently if they were in charge of a school then. And so, just giving children the opportunity to access honest information, age appropriate information, and then to bring them in like that, hope for other kids to have a really positive experience at school, or uh, just thinking a little deeper and, how would they have done things differently if they had the opportunity. So,
Exactly. And
it might seem like not that helpful because it's looking at the past, but these kids are going into the future. So
Mhm.
they can take that knowledge with them and those thoughts and be part of change.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if there's any kind of socioeconomic or any kind of things that we want our society to understand moving forward, teaching the children at a young age, right from wrong, and learning how to share, but also learning how to understand the horrific history of the past, and how to better move forward. And that's something I talk about with my personal opinion on reconciliation is building a future and building a Canada that we're all proud of being Indigenous or non-Indigenous.
Yeah.
Is part of the reconciliation process is how we're going to move forward together and build this country in a way where we're all proud, we're all happy, and that's going to create such a big healing process for everybody who's being affected by this, in my opinion. So,
Oh yeah, for sure. And in fact, there's so many ways to be part of reconciliation. And that starts with individuals, it starts with families, communities, governments. There were over 150,000 children,
mhm,
5 years and up, that went to residential schools in Canada. So what that means is there's over 150,000 stories to be heard.
mhm,
They may not all get published, but you could have neighbors down the street. You could have people at your church or at your school that have stories. They have a family experience of residential schools. So,
mhm,
that's a great place for a lot of people to start is, hear those voices, welcome those stories.
mhm,
It's part of healing. One of the things about my mom and her storytelling, which was amazing to witness, is when I was young and growing up with her, she was still really hurt. She was traumatized. She was angry about that experience. And who wouldn't be? I totally understand that. And but as she grew older and then started taking the healing retreats and the survivors workshops, the focus of her story changed, and it was easier for her to tell and to share those stories. And so that's a sign of healing right there. And so it was really nice to see her go through that transition, because she did that transition and shared those stories then with my daughters, and it was really exciting to see how they welcomed those stories and how the tone was so different.
mhm.
But it was a great opportunity for all of them.
That's so nice. Well, it's so, like you said, it's reconciliation, and it starts with the individual, right? So, and there are so many things that we can do as an individual here in Canada to, be part of this journey, and some of it's really simple, and some of it's complicated. But at the end of the day, everything counts. It's like, it's just part of the process, right? I did want to. Go ahead.
I was going to say exactly. And as I say, it starts with the individual, their family, their community, right through to government and policies. Yeah.
Absolutely. Uh, I really enjoyed the comment here that Sharon put, Sharon Clausen, and she said, "I really didn't know anything about it until the grades were found. Teoni and I went to the same elementary school, and then Teoni and her books should be offered in the curriculum going forward." I agree with her too. Like, and I was going to ask you that question before you talked about, like, obviously your book has some great educational value for children. So you've been going to schools, and how's the reaction being from, like, if you can tell me about the actual children itself, like what's
Sure.
been their comments towards you when you go to the school, or when you hear from the teacher that you'd gone there and educate them. Like, I'm really curious what a young child thinks of all of this.
Well, first of all, I just want us to take one step back in time
That's fine. Yeah,
and
go for it.
Yeah, this was when I was doing presentations on residential schools, and I was in the Okanagan, and I
Oh,
was
so
just
it wasn't with the book.
no,
It
this is
wasn't with
before the
the
book.
book. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is before the book. But what happened was it was then that I started introducing the UN Declaration on the Rights of the Child. And I also did speak with creative writing English classes, older kids. But one of the things um, that the instructor, the person who organized my presentations there at that school, said to me, and he sent me a reference letter. He was so pleased. He said, you know, he'd seen presentations and heard them before on residential schools, but never seen the approach that I had taken, and was just so happy with it, and just gave the children another opportunity to not look only at the past, but to look at the present. How does this affect them and children across Canada? So that was really exciting. And I love being in the classroom. Unfortunately, with COVID, I have not been able to go into the classroom. So it's been virtual presentations. I'm so grateful for them because I
Hmm.
still get to interact with the kids usually at the end. uh, they'll come forward and they'll have questions, and I just love that. I love to hear their questions and how they think about things,
Hmm.
and uh, yeah, you know, they're
They're so
brilliant.
honest. They're so honest, right?
Yeah,
Like at that age, they're such a sponge, and there's no filter, right? So they can really ask some questions that you would think an adult can't even come up with, you know?
yeah. I remember. Oh, they're usually really happy. Like I remember being at that school in the Okanagan, and you know what? A lot of the kids, they come up to you afterwards, and they understand the story, and they understand the injustice, and you know they really feel that. And so I remember being at that school, and some of the kids came up afterwards to say thank you. You know, it wasn't enough that their teacher had said thank you and then gifted something from the class to me. The kids came up and said thank you so much, and you know I felt really sad about that, but you know, I'm glad to hear your stories, and they just really want to connect. So I love that part. I love hearing directly from the kids. So I'm hoping by next spring, when Abalone Woman comes out in May,
Hmm.
that I'll be able to have a little bit of time in the classrooms, or maybe it'll
For
be next
sure.
September.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Speaking
just
of
love
which, as we're getting close to the end of the hour here, if since we want to maybe touch base on abalone women, just maybe a little tidbit idea of what
it. Sure.
people can expect in the spring.
Without giving it all away, right?
Don't give it all away. We need people to come buy the book, right?
Yeah. Well, for starters, I want to say that we have the cover, and I'm so excited about the cover. I was really thrilled with Little Wolf. I remember just being so excited and couldn't
Yeah.
wait for people to see that. And I have that sense again with Abalone Woman. The cover is gorgeous.
Hmm.
Uh, so super excited about that. Really glad to be able to share that story as well. It's the third book. It'll be the last book in this trilogy. Although
Hmm.
people have asked me if I had thought of writing more stories, because
Hmm.
they're appreciating these stories so much, and they would love
Yes.
to see. There's the cover. They would love to be
Oh,
able
that's
to read
beautiful.
more. And in
Yeah.
fact, I've had adults say like, "I want more Little Wolf stories," you know. So
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it, but now I've been asked, so maybe I should think about it.
Look
Anyway,
into it.
so Abalone Woman, it'll be out May 2022. I can't remember the date. Sorry, mid-May, I think.
That's
But
okay.
anyway,
I'm sure we'll post it again.
so you can see this cover is just gorgeous. It's so
Oh, it's
done.
so cool.
I love it. And so you will learn about this cover in the story. And I'm
Hmm.
super excited to be able to share that actually. That is part of a dream. And dreams were actually really influential in bringing this story to life because, you know, I had lived a lot of this. Um, my mom's residential school experiences are different family experiences, but the dreams made me look at everything differently and realize, you know, there's stories here that you could share. And it's so funny because as a journalist, I was so used to helping other people bring their stories out. And I feel like everyone has a story. So, you know, I love doing that. But this time is a little different because now it's more intimate, more about, you know, me as an individual, our family. So it's been quite a process. So Abalone Woman, you learn a little more about how the story all came together, the stories, and a little bit of a full circle moment there. Definitely.
Nice. It's a beautiful cover, and I'm excited to see it too. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it again. Actually, I enjoy. I don't know if you have the answer to this one, but I'm going to just ask you. Sharon Clausen had asked, "Are you going to release the third book together in a package set with a gorgeous sleeve for them to slip into, like a trio trilogy
Oh,
packaging?"
a box set or something like that. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, like a Star Wars box set.
I hadn't thought of that. I don't know if the publisher has thought about that, but it's something to consider for sure.
There you go. I'm throwing the
Yeah,
idea out anyway. So is
yeah.
Sharon is anyway. So
I
that's
like the idea.
fantastic.
I like it.
That's cool.
So,
Absolutely.
uh,
Well,
so
yeah, we got about 5 minutes left, and I just want to reiterate earlier that I, for some reason, thought we started at 1:30, so that's why at 2:30 I was like, okay, time to go. So I drank way too much coffee. That's why I did that. So I'm so happy we're still going here, which is good.
I thought it was because you're so used to doing like a half an hour podcast with Our Native Land. So I went, oh,
It could have
he's
been,
on that.
it could have been Oh, it could have been a mixture of the coffee that I normally record 22 minutes and 20 seconds. So it could have been that.
There
Yeah,
you
you can
go.
see the link at the bottom. If you want to get a hold of, some of the episodes that we have done for 22 minutes, they're the link
Mm.
below. So, but I'll kind of wrap that up at the end. But going back to what I said earlier, I want to thank you so much for being here. This has been great. So, your closing thoughts on how you're feeling right now. Obviously, this has been a great book launch opportunity for you. In an ideal world, we would have done this in person at a bookstore.
Oh,
But
yeah.
with COVID, these things happen. But maybe by the springtime, we can figure this out. So if you just want to take as much time as you need to give your closing thoughts on your book and your books and what we've done today.
Okay. Well, first I want to say that part of this whole process was I was looking forward to the book launches because I thought, oh, how exciting. I'll be able to see family and friends and meet new people in centers that are really important to me, like Victoria, Vancouver, and the Sunshine Coast. I wrote these stories. They came to life on the Sunshine Coast. So, and I have, really great community there. So I wanted to include everyone. So with COVID, that of course is not happening, making the best of it, doing a virtual presentation. So thank you for being part of that. Um, Also, just want to say one of the positive things, though, having two books come out in 1 year, and for all authors right now, is I think people are reading more right now. We've had more time at home during COVID. So, you can only watch so much TV and you need a little balance there. So I think there's
Yeah.
more reading going on right now, which is really exciting for me. Uh, and also, just part of that, I want to thank Heritage House Publishing because I feel from the very beginning, Laura there, who's the editor, really heard the stories and understood the stories. And I appreciated that. So I feel like, we were a good match. So I hope that that keeps going forward in a positive way and just really want to thank the people at Heritage for being there and getting the story. And for you, Tchadas, for being such a great host. And I hope we get to do more work together at some point.
I hope so too. That's for sure.
And Monroe Books has been outstanding from the very beginning. I've popped in there and signed books, and every time I go in, they're just so helpful and awesome. And in fact, we have lots of great bookstores in our region and in BC, across Canada, that we can be thankful for. They're just so excited about the products they have. You can go in and say, "Hey, I need a book for someone who's 9," and they'll point you in the right direction. And because I've heard this from people, and they'll leave with great books for a 9-year-old for a birthday present, or anyone, any age. So very blessed. Also want to thank my family and my friends for all their support. It means so much to me, especially during this COVID time when we don't have as much interaction with each other. So super important. So thank you all. Thank you all so much. One of the things I have always felt is that we learn so much from each other when we share our stories. And some people think, I don't have anything to say, but you sit and you talk with someone and you can learn their stories. fairly quickly, and just helps them to bring their stories out when someone's interested. So that's always been a big thing for me, and I think that's probably part of why I ended up in journalism. Uh, I also feel the stories are medicine, and I'm really feeling that with these books, and feeling my ancestors being with me on this journey. My mom, those people, our ancestors, our family, have all paved the way for us to be where we are today. So I give thanks for that. And thank you. Thank you all for being
Awesome.
here today. Hope to see you in person soon.
Yeah, there we go. Well, thank you, Teoni, so much for those lovely words. And again, thank you so much for thinking of me and having me host this book launch. I know I've had you on the show twice, and we've just gone along really well, and we have good conversations, and this worked out great. Oh, that at Our Native Land podcast, missing an ST, but I'm sure people figured out. But yeah, anyways, if people want to hear more about both books individually in more detail, both those episodes, there it is. Both those episodes are available at checknews.ca/ONL, or you can download Our Native Land wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google. And there's also the Check Plus app. So if they actually want to watch us talk, they can download the app and watch both episodes through the Check Plus app for free for your TV, your iPad, your smartphone, all this stuff. So anyways, again, thank you so much. And again, just an acknowledgement again to all the Vancouver Island tribes and nations for having us here. We really appreciate it. Thank you again to Monroe Books. Thank you to everybody at oh my God, Heritage House. Everybody at Heritage House, and thank you, Monica, for being on top of the graphics and doing all the fun stuff to make this happen. And just finally, she can hopefully throw up the toll-free number for any residential school survivors that do want to reach out. This is, some topics that can affect people. So if you do need some help, don't forget to reach out. But otherwise, thank you to everybody for being here.
Yes, one more thing. I just want to say thank
go
you,
for it.
Monica. Thank you for being our tech person today. Much appreciated. All right.
Awesome. All right. Take care, everybody.